Hello and welcome to Ask The Squiz. I'm Andrew Williams.
And I'm Claire Kimball.
Claire, we're back for another go-round. Just as a reminder, in case this is your first time asking The Squiz, this is an opportunity to go into a couple of stories that you've told us you'd like a little bit more detail on.
So the idea is we'll be doing this on the first Thursday of the month, and Squizzes have awesome questions.
Very good questions.
We can't get to all of them in shortcuts or Squiz Today or the weekly wrap. This is just a place where if you've got a question about the news through the month, send it in. We'll put it in our little notebook. We'll come back to it first of the month. Good opportunity to knock off a few at a time.
Exactly. And as you said, we get lots of great questions. We've got a great cross-section of topics today. We've got tariffs and free trade. We've got algae in South Australia. And we've got high-flying pets. So let's get into it. Our first question is about one of the biggest ongoing news stories of 2025. That's US President Donald Trump's tariff regime. And that question comes from Claire, not this Claire, different Claire, unless you're moonlighting us and emailing us questions as well. How do Trump's tariffs and the free trade agreement interact? She says that she would have thought that the tariffs broke the free trade agreement.
It's a really good question, and she's got an excellent name, I have to say. I have to admit this question has really been on my mind too, going through this story, and the opportunity to dive into it I really appreciate. There's a really short answer, which is that Trump established those tariffs by using his national security and emergency powers, which means who cares about free trade agreements?
Yes. So there's a lot of assumed knowledge in just a few words there that we'll have to unpick. So maybe let's start with specifically what the Australia-US free trade agreement is. So it was signed back in 2004 under John Howard, came into effect in 2005. That's around the time you were working in Parliament.
I was absolutely working in Parliament House during that time. I remember it very well. So George W. Bush was the president. He and Howard had a very close relationship. Americans particularly appreciated the role that Australia took during the war on terror following those 9/11 attacks. So just setting the scene there.
Yep.
This free trade agreement was very, very notable, not just for the US and Australia, but internationally. It was really that coming together of countries that were very, very close at the time. It meant that more than 97% of our non-agricultural exports to the United States became duty-free immediately. There was also a whole bunch of agricultural exports that became duty-free, and that was really unpopular in America with manufacturers and with farmers.
Right, and that's now been in place for 20 years, doing some quick maths, and two-way trade has more than doubled since then. But free trade agreements aren't the be-all and end-all. They aren't bulletproof. And so now we're fast-forwarding to Trump and tariffs, and this isn't his first go at it.
No, so during his first presidency, he put a 25% tariff on steel, 10% on aluminium, or aluminum, as they would say.
They would say aluminum, yes.
And he did that using what's called Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. That allows the president to impose tariffs if imports threaten national security.
Yes, so national security tariffs are exempt from any trade agreement. They can't even be challenged at the World Trade Organization, the WTO. So back then, Malcolm Turnbull got us an exemption, not because of the Australian Free Trade Agreement, but because of our military alliance and the fact that the US actually sells more to us than they buy from us. But this time around, we haven't had the same amount of luck.
When Trump came back in, Mark II of his presidency in January 2025, he went much bigger. On April the 2nd, he called it Liberation Day. He declared a national economic emergency, and he said that he would use his powers under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Just to explain why it's an emergency, essentially part of Trump's campaign and what he said would be his presidency is taking the American economy to another level, and that meant America making more of the things that it actually consumes. He sees that as existential to the American economy going forward. That's the emergency that he has set. So with that emergency declaration, he imposed a baseline tariff of 10% on all imports to the United States, including from Australia.
And then on top of that, there were higher reciprocal tariffs on countries that he said were treating the US unfairly. So China got 34%, Japan 24%, South Korea 25%. And he didn't stop there. He reimposed 25% tariffs on steel in February, and then he raised both steel and aluminium, aluminum to 50% in June. No exemptions for anyone, not even close allies like Australia.
Yeah, so to answer the question again, yes, tariffs do seem to break the spirit of any free trade agreement, but legally they don't violate it because of these national security and emergency provisions. It's kind of like having a contract that says unless in an emergency.
Yeah.
So Trump has declared that emergency and here we are.
So the Albanese government, in responding to it, has decided not to retaliate with tariffs of our own. They've said that trade wars are a race to the bottom. And we should also mention that the analysts don't think that the direct impact is going to be huge for Australia, but the indirect effects could be a lot bigger.
Because these tariffs impact the global economy so significantly, particularly for our Asian trading partners. They're the ones who buy our iron ore and our commodities. And if their economy's slow because they can't export as much to the United States, which is a massive market in the world, if they can't sell to America and it affects their economies and reduces their demand for our things. So it's an evolving situation. It's massive for the global economy. It's one we'll be talking about for a while yet.
Yep, but as you said, short answer, it's those emergency powers. They're the key reason that the free trade agreement is not factored in to the tariffs, and this will evolve and continue to evolve going forward. That's our first question done and dusted, but we're just getting started. Up next, we're going to head over to South Australia. Our next question is about the algal bloom in South Australia. Now, for anyone that hasn't followed this, one of our Squiz Today co-hosts, Alice, is from South Australia, so that's not us. We've been following it closely. She's well across this.
Yeah.
This is an ecological disaster that is affecting marine life in South Australia, and as a result, the marine and tourism industries in the state as well. And the question from Sandra about it is quite simple. Well, sort of. Can we explain the algal bloom and what it actually is?
I'm up for this.
Okay.
I reckon we can do it. Let's start with what the word first means. A bloom is made up of this sort of huge amount of microscopic algae, tiny, really tiny at a simple level, but then they bloom. When you take it from the microscopic view and look at it more broadly, they bloom in huge numbers. They can normally turn sort of blue-green water into sort of this browny, foamy stuff. If you've seen pictures of it, that's probably what you've seen. Really gross. And this particular type of algae is called Carina micomotoi.
Yeah.
I heard you say it on the Squiz Today once. You did it very well, much better than I do. But everyone knows I massacre anything that's difficult to say.
Carina micomotoi, that is not an easy one to say. Yeah, it was surfers that actually first raised the alarm about this bloom spreading in South Australia. They started feeling sick after they were surfing in the Fleurieu Peninsula. That was in mid-March, and it has been growing ever since then.
Yeah, it's not that toxic for humans. It can cause flu-like symptoms and rashes. It can make you a bit sick. But the government says that those symptoms do go away after a couple of hours.
Yeah, so they felt a bit unwell, but it wasn't too bad. But why it's become such a problem is because of the effect it's having on marine life. So it makes humans feel a bit sick. It is fatal to marine life. So these algae can damage the gills of fish, essentially drowning them in the ocean. I know it's a very unpleasant image, but that's what happens. Fish, dolphins, sea lions, they've all been washing up in recent months on the beaches of South Australia.
Yeah, and that's a problem, of course, from a very basic ecological level.
Yeah.
But it's also having this really big impact on fishing industries, on tourism industries in South Australia. There was a story in The Australian on Tuesday talking about a Cape Jarvis fisherman, a guy called Gary Lloyd, after dealing with this algal bloom for months. He's had to basically turn to harvesting kangaroos and rabbits to make an income because he's just not catching any fish.
No, they've moved out of that area, and so his livelihood has completely changed. He's had to completely change how he operates, and he's not the only one either. There have been stories of oyster harvesting regions being shut down and then reopened, sort of playing whack-a-mole with these regions where they source these very important industries to the South Australian economy, and they depend on the ocean for their profession, and they're having to either somehow work around it or, in the case of Gary Lloyd, just do something else entirely. So it's a big problem, and there's an obvious next question for me as I was reading about it. Why is it happening? What's causing it?
Yeah, so scientists there are pointing to three things. One, a heat wave. A marine heat wave. Temperatures in the ocean have been about 2.5 degrees hotter than normal since September last year. 2.5 degrees in the water is a lot.
A lot. And then if you combine that with the flood that you might remember from the River Murray, the River Murray flood in 2023. So what happened there is that created what's called nutrient-rich water, and that water over time has been making its way into this now substantially hotter ocean.
Then we had this swell of cold water in 2024, and that brings even more nutrients up to the surface. It's just how the dynamics of water work. Those three things mean that the algae have much more nutrients to feed on, better conditions to do it, so they increase in number. It blooms, the size gets quite large.
Yeah, and given the fact that it has grown in size so rapidly and it's causing so much damage, the next question that people have been asking for months now has been, when is it going to finally go away?
And the answer is no one really knows.
Nope.
The bloom usually goes away after a few months. It's been like this for about 5 months now. The Conversation had a piece that we read saying that it's not seeming to really be going anywhere at the moment. There's an oceanographer called Jochen Kampf who says that it just might be a case that the conditions improve eventually for a little bit, but it could get worse again over summer. For people there's no real certainty, it seems, about what's next. So, if you want to have a look at that piece, we'll put the episode notes to the Conversation piece about the conditions.
Yeah, if you really want to dig into the science, that was really interesting. He's essentially modelled how that's going to work. And basically it sort of seems like it could be perpetual, that it just ebbs and flows rather than completely goes away. So the South Australian Premier, Peter Malinauskas, he's called this a natural disaster. The federal government hasn't officially called it a natural disaster yet, but they have committed $28 million of funding to try and fix it. What was interesting about that was that they kind of committed the funding without really knowing exactly how it was going to be spent, because this is kind of a new problem that it's difficult to work through. So it's certainly not fixed yet. It's a long way from over. These stories of people struggling in South Australia as a result are still happening. They're still in the news on a regular basis. So as it continues to evolve, we'll make sure we keep covering those in Squiz today. Hope that's explained the algal bloom for you accurately and in an understandable way. We're going to move on to something a little bit lighter now, Claire. We've dealt with foreign trade.
Yes.
We've dealt with algal bloom.
Yes.
And now we're going to talk about pets on planes.
Pets on planes.
This has actually come from a few different people. This is based on a story from last week that's actually been brewing for a while, where Virgin Australia wants to have pets travel in the cabin of the plane. They've always been allowed in the cargo, but in the cabin of the plane. And that should be happening at Christmas. And we had a few people, including Verna and Simon, who asked, how exactly is that going to work?
And look, to put you at ease right away, you're not going to get on a plane and find that your seat has a Great Dane.
No, I'd love that, but a lot of people would not like that.
You're
at
probably
all.
like me. You watch these American shows or movies and you see a support therapy duck going down, or massive animal that sits somewhere. That's not what's going to happen.
No, there won't be that. I'd be all up for that. But that is not what is going to happen. So first of all, just to quickly mention, obviously there are service animals. Service animals are allowed on the plane, although if you read the stories about that, it's not easy, even if you do have an assistance animal, to necessarily get it on the plane. But here we are talking specifically about pets, and we are also talking about very small pets.
Yeah, so your dog has to be less than 8 kilograms and has to be in a carrier that fits under the seat.
Yes.
Even my dog Tucker, who's a French bulldog, so not a massive dog, he's about 15 kilos. He would also take great issue to being treated like a piece of baggage that would go under the seat. Yes. His dignity would be very bruised. Yeah. That's not on his radar.
Not going to happen.
Your dog...
Yeah.
No chance whatsoever.
No, she's 26 kilos. No chance. No chance at all. She'd love going on a plane, but she would, not fun for anyone else. So she's not riding in the cabin anytime soon. So, very small dogs under 8 kilograms, including the carrier. So, yes.
Got you.
So really they have to probably be 6 kilos.
5-6 kilos. Yeah.
And there was another common concern that was raised after this story came up for people like me who are allergic to cat hair or dog hair. You might be worried that you're now going to spend the plane just sneezing relentlessly. Well, there's some good news on that front as well.
Yeah, there's some rules around that. So it's only certain domestic routes that this is going to be allowed on. Second of all, they're only going to be allowed in special designated rows.
Yeah.
So if you're not so pet friendly, that's fine. You can pick another section of the plane to sit in. If you're okay with it, it might happen in your row if you happen to be seated somewhere there. So, yeah. And as we said, they can't go free range either. They'll be very contained in that carrier.
Yes, and it's only going to be small cats and dogs as well. So if you've got a snake that you're hoping to bring on the plane, Samuel L. Jackson style,
wow.
no dice.
No dice.
You won't be allowed to bring that on a plane with you yet. Maybe
Yet.
that'll change. So those are the rules as it stands. There's a lot of factors that make it a lot more restricted than maybe it seems like when you first see that headline. I will say, though, having a look into this, Virgin is really yet to still announce exactly how all this is going to work. If you go on their website, it's like, the rules are still coming. So it could very much change.
Yeah, and working with a regulator to do that. Yeah, so there's a lot that they have to sort of jump through. I guess you've got to make a decision that you're doing it.
Yes.
And then you've got to work through all the rules. And it's not just the rules that they want to impose for their airline, it's also what regulation is in place.
Yeah.
One of the things, and I thought it was really interesting in Squiz Today that you explained, I didn't know that airplanes were technically like designated as restaurants.
Me neither, yeah.
Which I assume in the food safety authority world, like they are serving food.
They're serving meals.
So there has to be particular health standards that come along with that. And of course, as we know, if you go to a restaurant, there's certain rules around pets being in restaurants as well. So, yeah, unpicking all of that, once they get the tick that they can actually do all of that, there'll be a lot more clarity, it seems, possibly around Christmas, that this will be able to get off the ground.
Yep, that's what they're planning. So if you fit the criteria, you could very much have your pet in a carrier under your seat, as long as it's less than 6 kilograms and only on a designated row by Christmas. No worries at all. Easy done.
Yeah, the romance of Christmas.
Exactly. So, for example, one of the questions that I had immediately was, where are they going to the toilet?
Yeah.
If that's required, if you're on a long flight. So these things are still very much unclear. And it's also worth noting, this will be a first in Australia. They'll be the first airline here to do it. But it's not a new thing around the world.
Other carriers do it at really great extents, Europe particularly.
Yep.
Of course, Europe's you can jump and hop into other countries with very
easily,
short distances. They manage it somehow, as we talked about. America do it. There's a bit of catching up that we've got, but clearly it is possible.
Yes. And if you wonder if any other airlines are going to maybe pick it up as well, no sign from Qantas that they are going to do it. They ruled it out last year. There hasn't been any update since then. And if you're nervous about it, and I understand that plenty of people do have phobias of pets, they are scared of dogs or cats, even small ones, through bad experiences and things like that, maybe just double check if you're taking a Virgin flight over Christmas, is this a pet-friendly one or not? So you can avoid it if it is. It'll be really interesting to see how it works.
And for Larissa Moore, who, of course, as Squizzes know, is a really important part of our team. She's been on parental leave for a bit. She's coming back soon, which is really exciting. One of the stories that really rocked her world was right in the early days of Squiz Today podcasting, and it was about the emotional support duck, Daniel to Duckin Stinkerbutt, who flew on a plane. We'll put a link to that story as well. Larissa will appreciate it at least.
And you know what? I would say that's as difficult a name to pronounce as any other, and you nailed it. So
Daniel to Duckin Stinkerbutt.
There you go. There it again. Clip it up. We'll save that for later. Excellent. Thank you very much, Claire. That is our second edition of Ask the Squiz done and dusted. Really appreciate you joining us on the show again. It's good fun.
Yeah, I like it. Thank you.
And thank you for listening. Please keep the questions coming. We'll be back with another Ask the Squiz in the first week of September. So if you've got a question you'd like answered about the news, send us a note anytime over the next month at hello@thesquiz.com.au and we'll answer them then. Until next time.